Hey everybody, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep into something that I think a lot of language learners maybe kind of overlook,
Hmm.
and that is pronunciation.
Yeah,
So buckle up, because I think this deep dive might just completely revolutionize the way that you think about approaching languages.
I think so too.
And stick around until the very end, because we have a thought-provoking question for you that is really going to get you thinking about your own pronunciation journey.
For sure.
I'm joined by a fantastic expert who's amazing at connecting the dots and helping us understand why pronunciation is about so much more than just saying words correctly.
Yeah, pronunciation is often kind of pushed to the side when we're thinking about all of the things we need to learn in a language like grammar and vocabulary.
Right?
But I think that it really is the key to unlocking fluency in a language.
Okay, I'm intrigued. The sources that we've got today are absolutely packed with insights, and I can't wait to unpack them with you.
Me too.
So let's jump right in. One of the things that really stood out to me from the sources is this idea that pronunciation is fundamentally about clarity of communication.
Yeah.
It's like the bedrock
This
of
makes
everything else.
it is the foundation.
Yeah.
And one of the sources uses this really great analogy about if you're trying to build a house on sand,
Ooh, yeah.
you can build a really fancy house, but
Runs on.
it's not going to stand up.
Right.
And it's the same thing with communication. You can have really great grammar, you can have really fantastic vocabulary, but if people can't understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
your message is lost.
Yeah. It's like that example in one of the sources that someone Tyler was talking about. If you go to a restaurant and you order a sheet instead of a seat,
Right.
all of a sudden you're not ordering a place to sit.
Yeah, you're asking for bedding in a restaurant,
Exactly.
which, probably they don't have.
Probably not the best idea.
But, this happens all the time, these little mix-ups,
Yeah.
especially with sounds that are similar in a language. So clarity is king. I think that's the takeaway here.
Clarity is king.
And pronunciation is the crown.
Love it. All right, so we've got clarity as this foundation,
Yeah.
but the sources go beyond just avoiding these awkward situations.
Mm-hmm.
They actually talk about how pronunciation impacts your confidence as a speaker, and particularly when you're speaking in public.
Absolutely, because if you're
Yeah.
constantly worried about whether or not people are going to understand you,
Yeah.
it can be really difficult to speak confidently.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that. I know when I'm not sure about my pronunciation in a language,
Yeah,
I get self-conscious and I just end up speaking less.
right. And you kind of hold back.
You hold back because you're so worried about sounding silly or making a mistake.
And the sources talk about how that's such a shame because having good pronunciation can give you the confidence to really fully participate
Yeah.
in conversations, in meetings, in presentations, and to share your ideas and your thoughts without being afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah. Have you ever held back from speaking because you were unsure about your pronunciation?
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody has at some point.
For sure.
And it really does limit your ability to connect with people and express yourself.
Yeah. It's a really common experience,
Mm-hmm.
but it can have a big impact on how you interact in the language.
Definitely. And what's really interesting is that the sources connect pronunciation practice with improving your listening comprehension.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How does that work?
So when you're practicing pronunciation and you're training your mouth to make these sounds correctly, you're also simultaneously training your ear to recognize those sounds when you hear them.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's kind of like you're learning a secret code.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, all of this jumble of sounds starts to make sense because you're like, oh, I know how to make that sound, so now I can hear it when somebody else makes it.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good point, because it reminds me of when I was learning Italian. I really struggled to understand fast speech until I really focused on my pronunciation. And it was like suddenly this light bulb went on. I was like, oh, I can hear the sounds that I'm learning to make.
And it all kind of clicks into place.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. And the sources talk about how pronunciation is also like a social superpower because it helps you to connect with people from different cultures and to avoid maybe accidentally offending someone and just to build stronger relationships overall.
Yeah.
I mean, even something as simple as pronouncing somebody's name correctly
Right.
shows respect, and it instantly creates this warmer connection with that person.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, I see you, I value you.
Exactly.
And, honestly, sometimes nailing a really tricky pronunciation makes you feel like a language learning superhero.
Right. It's like a little victory.
Yes, exactly.
And it's not just about social situations. The sources also highlight how important pronunciation is in professional settings.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like if you think about job interviews, presentations, communicating in international business, clear communication is essential for success in those contexts.
Yeah. especially in our increasingly globalized world.
Exactly.
It's more important than ever. I can't even imagine trying to navigate a global career without good pronunciation skills.
Yeah, it'd be pretty tricky.
It'd be like trying to climb a mountain with a broken leg.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the sources even asks, what professional goals could better pronunciation help you achieve?
Ooh.
So it's kind of getting us to think about the real implications of pronunciation.
Yeah, the practical implications.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we've talked about how pronunciation impacts clarity, communication, confidence.
Social connection, professional success.
Mm-hmm. And this brings us to another really important point that the sources make.
What's that?
It's that pronunciation is a lifelong skill.
Mm.
It's not something that you just master at the beginner level and then you forget about it.
Right. It's not a one and done.
No.
It's something that we continue to work on and refine over time.
Right. And I really like this concept of fossilization that they brought up, which is basically this idea that if you don't address pronunciation errors early on, they can become like these ingrained habits that are really hard to change later on.
Right.
Have you ever experienced that?
Absolutely. It's so frustrating to realize that you've been mispronouncing something for years.
Yes.
And now it's like really difficult to fix it.
It's so hard.
But that's why the sources say that it's so important to have consistent pronunciation practice at all levels. Even if you feel like you have pretty good pronunciation, there are always nuances that you can work on and refine.
Right. It's a journey of continuous improvement.
Absolutely.
Not just this one and done task.
For sure.
Okay. And this is where things get even more fascinating.
Okay, tell me more.
Because the sources connect pronunciation to other language skills, like spelling and reading and even grammar.
It's true. It might seem kind of surprising at first, but if you think about it, they're all interconnected.
Right.
So for example, if you understand the relationship between sounds and letters, that can really help you to improve your reading and your spelling skills.
Yeah, especially in languages that have crazy spelling rules.
Exactly. And even grammar can be affected by pronunciation. The way that you pronounce a sentence can actually change its meaning.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it's true.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's take the sentence. He didn't say he loved her.
Okay.
If I emphasize the word say, it implies that maybe he showed his love in a different way. But if I emphasize the word loved, then it suggests that maybe he didn't have those feelings for her at all.
Okay, wow.
So just by changing the pronunciation, we've changed the meaning.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
It shows how much nuance pronunciation can add.
It really does.
Speaking of nuance, the sources also delve into this concept of native-like fluency.
Yeah, I think it's really important to clarify what we mean by that.
Okay.
The goal isn't necessarily to erase your accent completely.
Right.
Because accents are a beautiful part of linguistic diversity.
I agree.
It's more about achieving clear, natural communication that's easily understood by others. And this is where being exposed to different accents becomes really valuable.
Yeah, so it's kind of like within your own language, how you learn to appreciate different dialects and accents.
Exactly.
And the more that you're exposed to them,
Yeah.
the better you'll be able to understand and communicate with people from diverse backgrounds.
Exactly.
And what I also loved is that the sources talk about how fun pronunciation practice can be.
It can be.
They mention things like tongue twisters and role plays and even like phonetic games.
It's true.
Yeah.
We can make it fun. We don't have to make it boring.
It's like turning pronunciation practice into a language learning party.
Exactly. And we shouldn't forget the power of practicing pronunciation with other people.
Ooh. Yeah, like in a group.
Yeah, like with a language partner or in a class, because we can learn so much from each other.
Yeah.
And when it's enjoyable, we're much more likely to stick with it.
Definitely. Okay. And now for the elephant in the room.
Oh, what's that?
The sources point to something that I think we really need to address head on,
Okay.
and that is teacher responsibility. Because unfortunately, pronunciation is often neglected in language classrooms.
You're right. It often is, and I think it's a real missed opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
Because pronunciation is such an important part of language learning.
Yeah, I agree. I understand that teachers have time constraints.
Yeah.
And, they're pressured to prioritize grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah.
But I really do believe that even small amounts of focused pronunciation practice can make a world of difference for learners.
It can. It's like giving somebody a really powerful tool,
Right.
but not teaching them how to use it.
Exactly. So let's empower our listeners
Let's do it.
with some practical strategies for success.
That's awesome.
The sources give us some really fantastic advice, and we're going to break it all down for you
Okay.
and make it really easy to understand and apply to your own language learning.
Yeah. Let's go. Okay, so one of the most powerful tools that the sources recommend for improving your pronunciation is learning the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA.
Oh, the IPA. I know some people are probably listening to this and thinking, I have another alphabet to learn.
I know.
But I promise you, it is not as intimidating as it sounds.
It really isn't. Once you understand it, it can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Think of it like a pronunciation roadmap.
Ooh, I like that.
So the IPA, it uses symbols to represent all of the different sounds of human speech.
Right.
And it gives you a really precise way to understand and reproduce sounds without having to rely on the often inconsistent spellings of different languages.
It's like having a universal pronunciation key.
Exactly.
Once you get the hang of it,
Mm-hmm.
it can just make learning new languages so much easier.
Yeah, because you're no longer trying to figure out how a word is pronounced based on how it's spelled.
Right.
You can just look at the IPA symbols and you know exactly what sound to make.
It takes out all the guesswork. I love it. Okay, so we have the IPA as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
The sources also talk about the importance of good modeling.
Right.
So what does that mean?
So good modeling means finding clear audio or video examples of native speakers pronouncing words and phrases correctly.
Oh,
So this could be from language learning apps, podcasts, movies, whatever resources you're using.
it's like having a pronunciation coach right in your pocket.
Exactly.
You can listen to them as many times as you need.
Mm-hmm.
Slow it down.
Yeah.
Really pay attention to how they're making the sounds.
And speaking of coaches, the sources also talk about the importance of constructive feedback.
Yes, feedback is so important.
It is.
Where do you get that feedback from?
So you can get feedback from a teacher, from a language partner, or even from speech recognition software.
Ooh, interesting.
There are a lot of apps out there now that can listen to you speak
Yeah.
and give you feedback on your pronunciation.
Yeah, I've been playing around with some of those, and I'm actually really surprised at how useful they are.
Yeah, me too.
It's like having a pronunciation mirror
Yeah.
that just shows you exactly what your mouth is doing.
Yeah, and it can be really helpful to see like, oh, I was making this sound when I thought I was making that sound.
Right.
So it can really help you to pinpoint those areas where you need to improve.
It's amazing how technology can really enhance our learning these days.
It is.
Okay, so we have the IPA, good modeling constructive feedback, and one final thing that the sources remind us about
Okay, what's that?
is the importance of cultural context.
Yes.
So what do they mean by that?
So pronunciation isn't just about individual sounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about how those sounds are used in different situations.
Okay.
So think about like idioms and slang and cultural expressions.
Right.
They often have their own unique pronunciation patterns
Interesting.
that you wouldn't necessarily find in a textbook.
Yeah, it's like understanding the rhythm and flow
Yeah.
of the language as it's actually spoken and picking up on those little subtle cues that can make you sound more natural and authentic.
Yeah, and so by immersing yourself in the culture
Mhm.
and paying attention to how people are actually using the language, you can really take your pronunciation skills to the next level.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
Let's do a quick recap for our listeners.
Okay, sounds good.
So we started by diving into why pronunciation is so critical for language learners.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how it impacts everything from clarity and communication
Yeah,
to confidence and social connection
for sure.
and even professional success.
Absolutely.
We debunked that myth
Mm.
that pronunciation is just for beginners.
Yeah.
And we emphasized that it's a skill that's worth honing at every stage of your language learning journey.
It's a lifelong process.
It is a lifelong process. Remember that fossilization concept?
Oh, yeah.
Don't let those early pronunciation errors
Cool.
become deeply rooted.
No way.
We also explored all of those practical strategies for improving pronunciation,
Mm-hmm.
like using the IPA,
Yes.
finding good modeling and feedback,
Absolutely.
using technology to your advantage,
Right.
and paying attention to that all-important cultural context.
That's so
And
important.
we challenge this idea
Mm-hmm.
that pronunciation is something that teachers can afford to neglect.
Right.
Teachers, it is time to equip our students with the pronunciation tools that they need to truly thrive in their language learning.
I completely agree.
I couldn't agree more. And before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought
Ooh.
of something to really ponder. If you could master the pronunciation of any sound or word in your target language,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I think it's a really interesting question because it gets you thinking about, like,
Yeah.
what does pronunciation mean to you personally?
Yeah.
Is there a sound that just always trips you up?
Mm.
Or is there a word that has like a really deep cultural significance to you?
Right.
Whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
let that be your pronunciation goal.
Oh, yeah, I love that. It's like you're giving yourself a pronunciation quest,
Yes,
a challenge to conquer.
exactly.
Um, and as you kind of embark on that quest,
Mm-hmm.
remember this pronunciation is powerful.
Yeah.
It can boost your confidence, it can unlock communication, and it can open doors to incredible cultural experiences.
It really is like finding that missing piece of the fluency puzzle.
Yes, it is.
And the best part is that anyone can improve their pronunciation
Mm-hmm.
with dedication and the right strategies.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to embrace the challenge
Yeah.
and enjoy the journey.
Have fun with it.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you found it insightful, empowering, and maybe even a little inspiring.
Me too.
Remember,
Yeah.
every language has its own music,
Mm-hmm.
and pronunciation is how we learn to sing it beautifully.
I love that.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep practicing.